June 20, 1944, aboard the USS Enterprise in the Philippine Sea. Lieutenant Junior Grade Saburo Kitamura of the Imperial Japanese Navy stood in the mess hall, his hands trembling as he balanced a tray piled higher than anything his squadron had eaten in days. Fried chicken, buttery mashed potatoes, green beans, white bread, apple pie, and a glass of chilled milk filled the tray. The American sailor behind the counter, growing impatient, motioned toward the ice cream station. Chocolate or vanilla? The words didn't register. Ice cream had no place on a warship. It required refrigeration that combat ships couldn't afford. Yet here, aboard America's most battle-tested carrier, enemy prisoners were being served frozen desserts. Kitamura had been rescued from the Philippine Sea just 4 hours earlier. One of 43 Japanese pilots recovered after the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. He had expected execution, or at best, hunger and torment. Japanese propaganda had been clear. Americans were portrayed as savages who consumed their captives, demons who took pleasure in cruelty. Yet, instead of brutality, medics tended to his injuries, administered morphine for the pain, and offered him a choice of ice cream flavors. The simple question, chocolate or vanilla, would linger in his mind for years, marking the moment when his perception of the war, of America, and of reality itself began to collapse. Throughout the Pacific War, around 35 Zarosan Japanese service members found themselves held by the U.S. Navy, confronting a level of comfort and supply that dismantled their beliefs about American frailty. They saw ships where common sailors dined better than Japanese admirals, where machines endlessly turned seawater into fresh water, and where ice cream makers ran non-stop, even during combat. These encounters with American naval efficiency broke the spiritual core of Japan's military ideology more completely than any loss on the battlefield. The arithmetic of naval plenty was measured in calories and efficiency. Japanese sailors survived on rice balls and pickled vegetables, while American crews enjoyed 100 calories a day from diverse, fresh meals. Japanese carriers fueled planes by hand. But American ships relied on automation, while the Imperial Navy prayed for divine winds. The U.S. Navy created its own environment with refrigeration, air conditioning, and ice cream on the open sea. The change began the instant Japanese survivors were brought aboard American ships. Commander Mitsuo Fuchida, architect of the Pearl Harbor attack, who later became a Christian minister, in the United States, recorded his 1945 rescue aboard the USS Missouri. They pulled me up like a fish on a line, and I braced myself for death. Instead, a medic checked my wounds while a sailor handed me a cup of coffee. Real coffee, hot, with sugar and cream. I hadn't tasted it since 1942. The sailor apologized for having no donuts left. That simple remark about running out of donuts, while Japanese troops were reduced to eating leather, exposed the vast divide between propaganda and truth. Captured post-war records from the Imperial Japanese Navy revealed that by 1944, enlisted men were receiving only about 400 calories per day, when rations were available. Most of their protein came from fish, provided ships had enough fuel to catch it. Vitamin deficiencies were widespread. Barbary, scurvy, and night blindness plagued crews. American naval rations, By contrast, included fresh meat daily, frozen vegetables, fresh baked bread, dairy products, eggs for breakfast, and multiple beverage options. The Office of Naval Records shows that carrier mess halls in 1944 served approximately 15,000 meals daily on large carriers, with menus rotating through dozens of options. Tuesday might feature roast beef, Thursday fried chicken, Sunday ham with pineapple. Japanese prisoners, accustomed to unchanging rice rations, couldn't comprehend this variety at sea. The shock deepened when Japanese prisoners discovered enlisted men's quarters. Petty Officer Kazuo Sakamaki, captured from a submarine at Pearl Harbor and America's first Japanese P, later wrote about his amazement at American submarine facilities. The enemy submarines had showers with hot water. The crews slept in bunks with mattresses and clean sheets. They had a library of books and magazines. The mess hall had a coffee urn that never emptied. They lived better underwater than we lived on land. The presence of ice cream machines on American warships delivered particularly devastating psychological impact. The Japanese Navy considered ice cream impossible at sea, a luxury requiring resources no combat vessel could spare. Yet by 1943, the US Navy operated floating ice cream factories. The USS Lexington's ice cream plant could produce 500 gall. Concrete barges were converted to ice cream vessels, producing 5,000 gall per shift. When the USS Lexington CV-16 was torpedoed and listing, sailors, evacuating to other ships, reportedly rescued ice cream stocks before abandoning ship. Japanese prisoners watched American damage control parties, exhausted from fighting fires and flooding, receive ice cream sundaes as battle rations. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. Their nation, fighting for its existence, couldn't provide basic nutrition to forces. The enemy, supposedly decadent and weak, gave ice cream to sailors during combat. Chief Petty Officer Yoshio Yamada, captured when his destroyer sank at Lady Gulf, spent 3 days aboard USS Iowa before transferred to shore facilities. His smuggled diary, discovered decades later, recorded, "The battleship's crew eats in shifts, but the food never stops. They have machines that peel potatoes, slice bread, make ice. The kitchen runs 24 hours. They threw away more food after one meal than my entire ship received in weekly supplies." When I asked why they waste, the guard laughed and said, "It's not waste if you have unlimited supplies." The laundry facilities stunned Japanese prisoners accustomed to washing clothes in seawater. American carriers had industrial washing machines, dryers, and pressing equipment. Enlisted sailors received clean uniforms twice weekly. Fresh water, precious beyond measure. On Japanese ships where men went weeks without bathing, flowed freely for showers, laundry, and cleaning. The evaporators on USS Enterprise could produce 140,000 gallons of fresh water daily. More than the entire Japanese carrier force could produce combined. Recreation facilities on American carriers seemed impossible fiction to Japanese military minds. Ships had movie theaters showing Hollywood films, libraries with thousands of books, gymnasiums with basketball courts, hobby shops for woodworking and crafts. The USS Enterprise's newspaper, published daily at sea, included sports scores, comic strips, and news from home. Japanese carriers had meditation spaces and shrine rooms. American carriers had soda fountains serving milkshakes. Lieutenant Commander Tishi Mieta, captured after his Zero was shot down over Iwima. Spent 2 weeks aboard USS Bunker Hill. He later testified to American interrogators. Your enlisted sailors live better than our officers. They have radios in their quarters, photographs of girlfriends, packages from home with chocolate and cigarettes. They complain about food that would be a feast for Japanese admirals. One sailor threw away a candy bar because it had melted slightly. That candy bar represented more sugar than Japanese pilots saw in months. The medical facilities exposed another gulf. Japanese naval medicine focused on returning wounded to duty regardless of condition. American sick bays treated enemies with the same advanced care as their own sailors. Operating theaters on carriers had X-ray machines, blood banks, surgical equipment matching shore hospitals. Antibiotics, particularly penicillin, seemed like magic to Japanese medical personnel who watched infected wounds heal in days instead of killing in weeks. Pharmacists mate Second Ice Robert Wagner, serving aboard USS Intrepid, later recalled treating Japanese prisoners. They couldn't believe we'd waste medicine on enemies. One pilot with a badly infected leg wound kept trying to refuse treatment, saying, "Save it for Americans." I had to show him our medical stores, lockers full of sulfur, penicillin, morphine, to convince him we had plenty. He started crying. The repair facilities demonstrated American industrial supremacy at sea. Japanese ships limped back to homeland ports for any significant repair. American vessels fixed themselves while underway. Floating dry docks, repair ships, and carrier machine shops could manufacture replacement parts, rebuild engines, and fabricate entirely new equipment. USS Enterprise's machine shop could produce any part smaller than an airplane engine. The welding shop operated continuously. The electrical shop rewired systems while the ship fought. When kamikaze attacks intensified in 1945, Japanese pilots who survived crashes witnessed American damage control superiority firsthand. Inin Ryuji Nagatsuka, rescued after his damaged Zero ditched near USS Randolph, watched the carrier's crew repair kamikaze damage while conducting flight operations. They had foam that stopped fires instantly, pumps that removed water faster than it entered, metal plates that sealed holes while we watched. Teams worked with choreographed precision. No shouting, no confusion. They fixed in hours what would have sunk Japanese carriers. The food production systems on American carriers defied Japanese comprehension. Bakeries produced 15 thousand loaves of bread daily. Butcher shops processed whole beef carcasses stored in freezers larger than Japanese submarines. Ice machines produced tons of ice daily for food preservation and drinks. The galley on USS Enterprise used more electricity than entire Japanese destroyers. Steam kettles could cook 300 gall of soup simultaneously. Electric mixers, automatic dishwashers, and mechanical potato peelers handled tasks requiring dozens of Japanese sailors. Supply ships revealed the final dimension of American abundance. Japanese naval units waited months for resupply, often receiving fraction of requirements. American fast carrier groups received supplies weekly at sea. Fleet oilers transferred millions of gallons of fuel. Ammunition ships delivered tons of ordnance. Store ships brought fresh food, mail, replacement personnel, and luxury items. Lieutenant Minoru, Tanaka watched underway replenishment from USS Hornet's brig. 3 ships came alongside simultaneously. Fuel lines to port, ammunition, high lines to starboard. Helicopters delivering mail overhead. They transferred more supplies in 3 hours than Japanese carriers received in 3 months. The fresh food included lettuce, tomatoes, and fruit. Real fruit. We were fighting for the emperor with empty stomachs, while Americans ate salads at sea. The mail system, particularly, amazed Japanese prisoners who might receive 1 letter yearly, if fortunate. American sailors received mail weekly, even in combat zones. V-mail, photographically reduced letters arrived by thousands. Packages from home contained cookies, candy, books, records, and photographs. The mail call, impossible for Japanese forces operating beyond homeland waters, maintained American morale through connection to home. Christmas 1944 provided the most profound psychological impact. Japanese prisoners aboard American vessels witnessed holiday celebrations that exceeded pre-war Japanese New Year feasts. Minas from USS Enterprise, December 25, 1944. Documented roast turkey with stuffing, ham with pineapple glaze, mashed potatoes, sweet potatoes, cranberry sauce, 3 vegetables, fresh rolls, 3 pie varieties, ice cream, candy, nuts, and coffee. Seaman First Class Hiroshi Nakamura, imprisoned aboard USS Saratoga, wrote in a hidden diary. The Americans celebrated their Christmas while we attacked them. Every sailor received presents from organizations at home. Cigarettes, candy, books, razors. The mess hall was decorated with paper and lights. They sang songs and played music. They were happy. We were starving and dying for the emperor, while our enemies celebrated with abundance. This was when I knew Japan had already lost. The revelation went beyond food to fundamental worldview. The Yamato spirit, Japan's belief that spiritual strength could overcome material disadvantage, crumbled against American industrial reality. Inantio Yamamoto, captured at Okinawa, later wrote, "We were taught Americans were soft, that their abundance made them weak. But I watched them fight fires for 12 hours, then eat ice cream and return to battle. The abundance didn't weaken them, it sustained them. We were the weak ones, pretending spirit could replace food." By war's end, Japanese prisoners had witnessed impossibilities. Carriers producing fresh water from seawater, ice cream in the tropics, movies at sea, rise in combat zones, hospitals afloat, machine shops in battle. They had tasted foods most Japanese never knew existed. Hamburgers, hot dogs, milkshakes, apple pie, chocolate cake. They had experienced democracy's abundance. Enlisted men eating officers' food, all races serving together, enemies receiving medical care. The return of Japanese prisoners after surrender spread these revelations throughout Japan. Former PS became unwitting ambassadors of American abundance. Their testimonies more powerful than any occupation propaganda. They told of ships where sailors complained about food that Japanese would consider feasts, where ice cream was routine, where enlisted men lived better than Japanese nobility. Commander Mitsuo Fuida, the Pearl Harbor architect who experienced American abundance, converted to Christianity and became a missionary. His transformation from architect of surprise attack to preacher of reconciliation was rooted in that first cup of coffee aboard USS Missouri. The Americans had every reason to hate me, to let me die. Instead, they gave me medical care, food, and dignity. This abundance of spirit was more powerful than any weapon. Statistical summary from U.S. Naval records. Daily caloric intake, U.S. Navy 4th 100 calories, JN 12 400 calories. Freshwater production, large U.S. carriers 140,000 gall daily. Ice cream production, USS Lexington 500 gall daily. Bread production, USS Enterprise 15,000 loaves daily. Mail delivery weekly, even in combat zones. Movie screenings 2 to 3 different films weekly. Laundry done twice a week, clean uniforms. Stocked medical supplies, and full surgical facilities at sea. The Japanese prisoners who witnessed the abundance aboard American carriers went back to a devastated homeland carrying a transformative message. The enemy's power stemmed not from brutality, but compassion, not from scarcity, but plenty. Not from faith alone, but from organization. Their accounts helped ready Japan for both occupation and rebirth. They had glimpsed the future, and it tasted like chocolate ice cream served at sea in the midst of war. The shift in Japanese military minds brought on by witnessing American naval abundance stands as one of history's most profound ideological turnarounds. Soldiers who once prepared to die for the emperor instead survived to speak of American ice cream. Machines. Pilots who had prepared to die in suicide missions were spared to see the effortless abundance of democracy. Sailors once devoted to spiritual warfare realized that material comfort could strengthen, not weaken, morale. In the end, the ice cream machines aboard American carriers accomplished what bombs never could. The total collapse of Japan's militarist myths. The soft serve machines running as ships burned, the bread baked fresh amid combat, and the medical care offered to enemies spoke more powerfully than any weapon. These discoveries reshaped how the Japanese perceived American strength and their own loss. They went home not merely as defeated soldiers, but as witnesses to an unimaginable abundance, carrying insights that helped transform Japan from a militarist empire into a democratic partner. The story reminds us that true victory can come through example, not destruction, that prosperity can wield more influence than weapons, and that how a nation treats its foes reflects its deepest power. The Japanese, once unable to believe American carriers had ice cream machines, came to realize that democracy's greatest strength lay in its capacity to produce plenty, to share it even with enemies, and to uphold humanity amid the chaos of war.